I'm Ira Coleman. We're here at BTC 2019 Blockchain Training Conference, and we have Stefan Bayer. Thank you very much for joining us. You are with Cryptonics Consulting. Can you share a little bit about how you first got involved in the blockchain technology space?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So, how I got involved in the blockchain space. I used to work as a distributed systems researcher back in the early 2000s. That was way before Bitcoin. And we did work on stuff like consensus protocols, replicated databases, reliable group communication, fault-tolerant systems. And that's all very related. So when Bitcoin came out, I have to admit I first dismissed it as poorly scalable, crazy internet money. Mm-hmm. But then I sort of slowly got on board, in particular with the follow-up projects like Ethereum, smart contracts, and worked for a while in cybersecurity, and now sort of combined the two fields.
And at the beginning, why did you dismiss the technology itself?
Yeah, that's probably because I knew too much about the earlier distributed systems, and replicating data on every single node is just something you didn't do. That was poor practice. It didn't scale. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we still see that we're still working on scaling now in Bitcoin and related projects. So it's not an easy one to solve. But so yeah, technologically speaking, I dismissed it at first, I have to admit.
Sure. So it's been almost 20 years since you first become introduced to the technology. Has it been that long, or has it been longer than that?
Yeah, I did a PhD in 2004 in very low-level stuff, the embedded operating systems, and then moved into distributed systems. So what's that, 15 years?
Yeah. So in that 15 years, what have you noticed as the change from use and adoption?
Well, the early technology was obviously very experimental. I mean, I worked as a researcher, and we sort of struggled to get replicated databases, what we call them at this point, used in practice by companies. And that's sort of Bitcoin changed that. Obviously, it's a currency, so it's very specific use. But in terms of adoption, I mean, that's obviously took a while to take off as well. And it's still struggling in a sense, but everyone talks about Bitcoin. A lot of people trade Bitcoin, or at least buy Bitcoin. Yeah. But has it turned into like a global currency? We talk a lot about the unbanked and that sort of thing, and I've not seen that happen yet, but it might happen sooner or later.
Sure. So in today's space and where you're at today, we're obviously here at the BTC, and it's about the education aspect, and we continue to hear, providing people resources to be educated and to give them a space to learn. And you have a PhD in your experiences, but for the everyday person, how does a resource and conference like this make a difference to help educate everyone at a standard moving forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, education in this space is obviously very important, but it's difficult because it's highly technical. There's two places where we have to educate. One is the general public, obviously, and just too many people think of Bitcoin as crazy internet money, or of blockchain as some sort of magic truth machine, which is obviously wrong. I work a lot with smart contracts, and people have very strange ideas on what a smart contract can achieve. Just because you can automate a transaction doesn't make this transaction intelligent or private or anything like that. So that's obviously something we have to tell the general public. And then there's education for the technologists, for the programmers, and for the founders of technical startups. They need to know how to use this technology, and they get it wrong sometimes as well. And it's normal. There's a lack of engineers that can build a blockchain application right now. And you do see a lot of projects with poor engineering, and that can backfire. And especially in my field, security, it can have severe consequences for the whole industry, reputational consequence as well.
Sure. And you mentioned that your industry is security, and what more can the industry do to ensure that security is at its highest level? and what more support could be used to bring awareness about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the industry has to realize that that they have to think about security, cybersecurity from the beginning. A lot of startups have a great idea. Let's build something on the blockchain and move digital assets around. And then they suddenly find themselves in a position where they're moving millions around on a daily basis, and they have not thought about security before. And it's good to get away from this strict banking mentality of the financial sector, but these guys, they take security seriously from the beginning. So that's a positive aspect of the traditional financial industry. And particularly when I audit smart contracts now, I see a lot of mistakes that are not very unique to blockchain applications. They were around 30 years ago or longer, and banking applications deal with them on a daily basis. And the most important point there is to be aware. You have to raise awareness in the industry for cybersecurity.
Sure. What do you look most forward looking to, and where we're at today? I mean, 15 years in your education process in the industry, auditing smart contracts, and where do you see smart contracts becoming more applicable as a resource to help businesses and help individuals overall?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points to this. I mean, smart contracts. There are several definitions of them, and basically, if you talk about Ethereum, a smart contract is just a program that runs on a blockchain. But they become very useful when they automate any type of financial interactions. So all these decentralized finance projects, they are very interesting. They provide a new way of doing banking and financial applications. So that's sort of the open blockchain, the open systems world, where you get away from trusted third parties and put people in charge of their financial interactions. And then there's the other side where actually enterprises can use smart contracts to automate their transactions or their interactions. And I see smart contracts as an automation tool. Basically, you automate all sorts of business interactions.
Sure. And from your experiences, what support are you looking for within your consulting business, within cybersecurity, to make make this space easier for everyone to continue moving forward? Like, what barriers are you might be facing down the road that the space can come to as a resource for you?
Yeah, I mean, we focus a lot on cybersecurity and also on building blockchain applications from scratch, but with cybersecurity in mind. But the barriers we find is both sort of the reputation this blockchain world has. Everyone thinks blockchain is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is illegal internet money. So that's what a lot of businesses think. It's very difficult to have a meeting with a bank and try to convince them to do anything a bit open. And another barrier is sort of regulatory uncertainty. It's very difficult right now what you're allowed to do and where you're allowed to do it. They've all these different jurisdictions, and some are very tough on crypto projects, others are not so tough. Others try to be very open, like Malta, creating new regulations, and that's a good thing. But yeah, it's very difficult to know where it stands. You might as well start a project now and in 2 years find out that everything you've been doing is illegal or suddenly outlawed and you can't continue. Yeah. That puts off a lot of people.
Sure. What are you noticing? You had made mention that when you're doing audits, you're seeing individuals come up with crazy ideas. But what are you noticing in this space, and why individuals or companies are using smart contracts?
That's a difficult one to answer. Why they're doing it? I mean, there's two types of projects. Both are equally valid in a way, but obviously, I mean, some projects do it out of conviction. They think that they can change the world with having sort of a decentralized finance application and do some really interesting projects they believe in. And then there are others that sort of jump onto the hype wagon. And I'm not just talking about startups. I mean, I have a lot of meetings with large enterprises, banks, for example, that just want to do some sort of proof of concept with blockchain and smart contracts because they think they have to use it and they think they'll miss out. And that's valid up to a point as well, because that's good for these companies to spend some of their money in a proof of concept and try to figure out what makes sense and what doesn't. And maybe afterwards they'll come to a good conclusion. But yeah, these are sort of the driving forces. I mean, said before, decentralized finance is a very good use case where people are trying to make a difference. Yeah, and anything that automates financial transactions. The other good use cases, I mean, there's basically everything you put on the blockchain is timestamped and notarized in a way. So there are these low-hanging fruits that have been talked about since the blockchain exists, like just registering as a contract or document on the blockchain and making sure everyone knows what the correct version is. And that's sort of very simple applications, but they're not used much. That's something that is very useful and should, if we could do some sort of document notarization platform in a user-friendly way, that would be great. I've seen a few out there, but it's supposed to be easy, but no one has done it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is like, if there's an agreement between two different entities or someone's executing an idea, they could use the blockchain as a way for transparency and timestamp.
For example,
exactly.
For example, you could register your intellectual property, and then you can prove in 5 years' time that you are the inventor of some idea, and you can do that by registering a patent, but you cannot patent everything, and it takes a long time and it's expensive. Or you could do it on the blockchain, and managing of these intellectual property rights. That's a very interesting use case as well.
Wow. So we're here at BTC, the Blockchain Training Conference 2019, and as you're networking and walking around meeting new people, and someone walks up to you, and they're like, "Stefan, I'm new to this. Can you support me?" What would be one of an answer that you would provide advice for someone who's here? It's a very diverse audience to get someone going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I would ask them to explain their project in detail, and I would ask them why they think they need a blockchain. Because a lot of these projects that come to me, some might need a blockchain, some might not need a blockchain at all, and the majority probably have a good idea what the blockchain can do for them and why it would make sense to build a decentralized application. But they're doing it in the wrong way, or they're not quite sure how to do it. So the real question is, why do I need a blockchain? That's the biggest question every project has to think about, and then we can take it one step at a time and see how this can actually be implemented.
All right, Stefan, thank you very much for joining us this week,
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.